Humanity had always been isolated, tucked away in a quiet corner of the galaxy. They had thrived in that seclusion, unobserved and unchallenged by the larger galactic forces. Decades of technological advancement had elevated them beyond mere survival, and Earth had risen, quietly and steadily, among the stars. But then, the Galactic Council found them. The Council was a vast, sprawling entity, an alliance of powerful, ancient civilizations, and they saw the emergence of humanity with concern. Earth's rapid advancements, free from interference, posed a potential threat to the Council's long-standing power. And so, they summoned Earth's leaders to a summit, making it clear that this was not an invitation but a demand. Humanity was to send a representative to the Council's Grand Chamber to discuss Earth's place in the galaxy. That representative was Ethan Graves. Graves was chosen carefully, not only a skilled diplomat but also a man with an unwavering sense of purpose. He understood that this meeting was not about diplomacy. It was a trial, with humanity's autonomy hanging in the balance. As he stepped into the vast chamber, Graves felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. The council members loomed over him from all directions, their varied forms intimidating, their expressions a mix of amusement and disdain. To them, he was an upstart from an unproven world, a curiosity at best, a potential problem at worst. One by one, the council's senior representatives voiced their opinions, each more dismissive than the last. They referred to Earth as a primitive planet, an anomaly that had somehow evolved beyond its expected limitations. They spoke of Earth's advancements with a thinly veiled sense of disdain, as though humanity had overstepped its place in the natural order of things. Their tone was clear: Earth could not be allowed to continue its growth unchecked. Finally, the Council's most influential representative, a towering figure from a militaristic species, stood to address Graves. His voice was a deep, resonant hum that filled the chamber. "Human," he began, "we have observed your people's advancements. They are impressive for a species so young. But your reach exceeds your grasp. Your continued expansion threatens the balance we have maintained for millennia." Graves remained silent, his gaze steady, his expression impassive. The representative continued, "We are prepared to offer Earth a place within our oversight. Your people will limit their technology and share their discoveries with the Council. And in return we will protect your planet from the dangers of the galaxy." His eyes glinted with satisfaction as he added, "As a precaution, we will also establish a military base on your world. It is in your best interest to agree." Graves' jaw tightened. He knew what this was: thinly veiled subjugation. Humanity was to be brought under the Council's control, their progress stifled, their autonomy sacrificed in the name of protection. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "You speak of balance, yet you demand submission. Humanity does not seek conflict, but we will not be caged." The chamber buzzed with a ripple of laughter, some council members exchanging smug glances, as if they found his words amusing. Another representative spoke up, a serpentine being with scales that caught the dim light. "Your species is bold, human. But boldness without strength is dangerous." The alien's gaze flickered with something close to pity. "Do not mistake your isolation for strength." Graves did not flinch. "We know our strength, and we know the price of freedom. Humanity has learned the value of independence and the cost of defending it." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of amusement and impatience. They were used to compliance, to seeing younger species bow under the pressure of the council's overwhelming power. They could not fathom that Earth might respond any differently. The towering representative leaned forward, casting a shadow over Graves. "Do not let your pride blind you, human. Agree to our terms, and your people will thrive under our guidance. Refuse, and you will learn the price of defiance." Graves looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. In that moment, he made a decision, not just as a diplomat, but as a man representing the spirit of humanity itself. He straightened, his voice calm, unwavering. "You underestimate us. You see us as primitive, weak. But if you think humanity will yield without a fight, you are mistaken. You want war?" His voice echoed through the chamber, filled with a quiet, unshakable resolve. "We'll give you war." A stunned silence fell over the room. The council members exchanged looks of disbelief, some barely suppressing laughter, others eyeing Graves with newfound curiosity. They had not expected defiance. They had expected submission, perhaps a hint of resistance. But this? A direct challenge? From a species so young? The towering representative stared at Graves for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, a slow, mocking smile spread across his face. "You have courage, human! Foolish courage! But know this, the Council's will is absolute. We will not be challenged." Graves' expression remained unchanged. "And humanity's will is to be free. We will not be conquered." With that, he turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the council members in a mixture of anger, shock, and perhaps, for the first time, the slightest hint of respect. Following Graves' bold declaration, the council convened in private, and tensions simmered through their ranks. The humans, these council members believed, were clearly overstepping. The notion of Earth, an isolated, resource-limited planet, challenging the Galactic Councils was struck them as nothing more than a fleeting rebellion, audacious, but ultimately inconsequential. They agreed on a swift response, deciding to launch a minor military demonstration aimed at showing humanity the folly of its defiance. The strategy was simple and familiar, a show of force against a lesser species. They would mobilize a small fleet, enough to intimidate without inciting significant retaliation, an overwhelming strike designed to shatter morale. To them, it was a carefully calculated strategy, something they had employed on countless other young civilizations. The council factions, particularly those more military-driven, felt assured that humanity's resistance would falter once they saw the full might of the council's forces. But what the council failed to recognize was that Earth was no ordinary world and humanity was no ordinary race. For years, Earth had been preparing in secret, developing defenses unknown to any other species, all in the name of a hard-earned sovereignty. From highly advanced weapon systems to strategic shielding capable of deflecting council-grade weaponry, humanity had not been idle. They had observed, learned, and adapted. Earth's defense networks, operated from fortified underground bunkers, were a testament to humanity's commitment to survival, a line drawn firmly between submission and freedom. When the Council's fleet entered Earth's orbit, expecting an effortless show of power, they were met with something they hadn't anticipated: immediate and formidable resistance. Earth's defense systems activated with precision and purpose, launching countermeasures that crippled some of the first Council ships before they even had the chance to fire. The Council forces, stunned by this unexpected opposition, found themselves quickly outmatched, not just in technology but in tactical execution. Reports of the initial losses rippled back through the Council's ranks, and a growing sense of disbelief began to take root. How could a species they'd considered barely beyond primitive inflict this level of damage? Some among the Council argued that this resistance was a fluke, that humanity's defenses had to be finite, bound to falter with sustained pressure. They assumed that if they could simply apply more force, break through Earth's defenses, humanity would finally yield. However, with every additional wave they sent, the losses mounted. Earth's forces had anticipated the Council's tactics, leveraging intelligence gathered in secrecy to counter each move before it gained traction. They struck with surgical precision, coordinating with a sophistication the Council could barely comprehend. Earth's pilots operated with a deep sense of purpose, a unity born from generations of struggle, and it showed in every skirmish, every maneuver. Humanity was fighting for more than survival. They were fighting for their right to exist without restraint. For the Council soldiers, the encounters grew increasingly demoralizing. Reports trickling back from the front lines painted a picture of not just resistance but superiority. The Council's ships, unaccustomed to sustained resistance, began showing wear, and their commanders, baffled by humanity's resilience, began pulling back. And as the Council forces wavered, humanity saw its opportunity to press forward, seizing the upper hand with relentless precision. The realization that humanity was capable of more than token resistance began to fracture the Council's united front. Factions within the Council, previously confident in a swift victory, were now deeply unsettled. Some representatives, those who had urged caution from the start, pointed to humanity's resistance as proof that the Council had miscalculated, underestimating a species they knew little about. Others, driven by pride and resentment, refused to accept defeat, demanding a renewed offensive, a full-scale war to crush Earth and reassert Council dominance. As these internal debates grew heated, humanity remained resolute, refusing to let the pressure waver their determination. Graves and his team, monitoring the Council's movements from a secure command center on Earth, had anticipated this response. They had prepared not only to defend but to demonstrate that humanity would not be cowed by threats or force. And now, with Council forces beginning to splinter, they saw their chance to act. This was not just a matter of defending Earth. It was a fight for humanity's future, and they were prepared to see it through to the end. Unbeknownst to the Council, humanity's resolve ran deeper than mere technological prowess. They had allies among the Council's own ranks, rebels and dissidents from species that had long been disillusioned with the Council's overreach. These rebel factions, seeing an opportunity to weaken the Council, began feeding intelligence to Earth's forces, providing crucial insights into the Council's weaknesses. With this added advantage, Earth's strategic commanders planned counter-offensives that struck at the very heart of the Council's operations. As the Council's forces continued to suffer losses, the impact reverberated through its leadership. Once dismissive, Council representatives now faced undeniable evidence that Earth was not the easy target they had assumed. Their fleets, once seen as a near unstoppable force, were now scattered, stretched thin, and demoralized. Earth's commanders, with the insight provided by rebel factions, orchestrated a series of crippling strikes that targeted the Council's supply chains, weapon depots, and forward operating bases, dismantling their offensive capabilities piece by piece. At this point, humanity's resistance was no longer just a defensive effort. It had transformed into a calculated offensive, a message that Earth was not merely defending but reclaiming its right to stand as an equal. And within the Council's ranks, doubt continued to fester. Humanity's unexpected resistance had left the Galactic Council reeling, their once unified stance fractured by doubt and debate. While some Council leaders were eager to escalate, others began questioning the wisdom of continued aggression. Earth's resolve and resourcefulness had exposed rifts in the Council that were long hidden beneath a veneer of solidarity. Seeing this, Graves and his team recognized an opportunity to shift the momentum and destabilize the Council from within. Graves initiated contact with several sympathetic factions who had grown weary of the Council's authoritarian control. Through secure channels, he broadcast a message across Council territories, addressing the oppressed, the sidelined, and the disillusioned. His words painted a picture of humanity as a race that cherished its freedom above all else, a species unwilling to submit to a power that valued control over cooperation. He extended a call for unity among those who valued self-determination, framing Earth's defiance as a shared struggle against oppression. The message struck a nerve, resonating with those who felt stifled under the Council's rule, and small but significant movements began to take shape across several member planets. At the same time, Graves' intelligence network exploited this growing discontent, planting seeds of mistrust and feeding information about Earth's resilience and tactical acumen. News of the Council's losses, once carefully managed, began circulating widely, raising questions about their so-called invincibility. Civilians and lower-ranking officials, who had once viewed Earth as a minor nuisance, now saw them as a force capable of challenging the Council's authority. This shift in perception weakened the Council's internal cohesion, as some representatives began quietly advocating for peace rather than prolonging a costly conflict. Earth's military continued to leverage these fractures. Armed with intelligence from the rebel factions, Earth's commanders carried out precision strikes on vulnerable Council assets, aiming not just to cripple but to erode the Council's morale. Each calculated blow sent ripples of unease through the Council's ranks, undermining their confidence and forcing them to reckon with the reality that they were not facing a simple insurgent force, but a unified, intelligent adversary. Humanity's forces demonstrated a level of coordination that seemed impossible to the Council's leadership, and rumors spread that Earth had access to secrets from within the Council itself. The Council's inner circle found itself caught in a web of paranoia. Accusations of betrayal and sabotage flew between factions, as each tried to explain how a supposedly primitive species could outmaneuver the greatest alliance in the galaxy. A sense of dread crept through the upper echelons of the Council, and factions that had once been firm allies began questioning one another's loyalty. Graves' strategy was working. The Council, once a monolithic force, was beginning to unravel under the weight of its own arrogance and mistrust. Amidst the growing chaos, Graves struck again, this time with a public broadcast directed at the Council's civilian populations. He spoke plainly, with conviction, about humanity's commitment to freedom, emphasizing that Earth did not seek to dominate but to coexist. His words resonated, stirring the hearts of those who had come to view the Council's rule as oppressive rather than protective. The broadcast challenged the Council's authority at its core, and his words were amplified by rebel factions who saw in humanity's defiance a reflection of their own desires for independence. Council planets, once unquestioningly loyal, began to see fractures within their own societies. Minor uprisings broke out on worlds where resentment toward the Council's heavy-handed policies had long simmered beneath the surface. Civilian protests, emboldened by Earth's defiance, called for the Council to reconsider its stance. The Council's leaders scrambled to contain the dissent, but the message had spread too far. What was once a quiet murmur of dissatisfaction had grown into a chorus, echoing across the galaxy and undermining the very foundation of the Council's authority. The strain on the Council was undeniable. Supply lines became increasingly difficult to maintain as Council planets grew less cooperative, and even loyal factions began holding back support, wary of being dragged into a prolonged conflict that seemed to serve no purpose beyond defending the Council's bruised ego. Graves capitalized on this moment of vulnerability, targeting key Council outposts and communication centers to disrupt their coordination further. Earth's forces adapted quickly, exploiting the Council's confusion and pushing back with relentless precision, showing that they could not only defend but also go on the offensive when necessary. Meanwhile, Graves continued to work behind the scenes, negotiating with potential allies among the Council's ranks, each one a potential defection that could further erode the Council's unity. The Council's leadership, now beset by both external and internal pressures, struggled to maintain control. Long-held alliances frayed, and the once powerful Council found itself unable to present a unified front. Graves' deft manipulation of the Council's internal weaknesses turned the tide of the conflict without Earth needing to engage in large-scale battles. Humanity's strategic offensive had become a symbol of resilience, capturing the imagination of those across the galaxy who had long felt oppressed. The Council's leaders, watching their coalition crumble, began to realize the extent of their misjudgment. They were not fighting a mere rebellion but confronting a shift in the galactic order itself, one that they had unintentionally set in motion. As Earth continued to secure its position, the Council's representatives finally saw the necessity of a ceasefire. Graves' strategy of both military precision and psychological warfare had achieved what force alone could not: a recognition of humanity's sovereignty and the destabilization of the Council's rigid dominance. The Council, realizing their forces were spread too thin and their unity fractured, reluctantly issued a call for an emergency meeting with Earth's representatives. Graves accepted, knowing this was humanity's moment to redefine its place in the galaxy. He entered the Council chamber once more, but the atmosphere had transformed entirely. No longer did the Council's members radiate smug superiority. They regarded him now with wary respect, and many even bore visible marks of strain from the prolonged conflict. Graves' unshakable resolve and humanity's unrelenting resistance had left an undeniable impact. For the first time, the Council members sat silent, their haughty demeanor replaced by a cautious attentiveness. Graves seized this opportunity, not with a display of arrogance, but with a calm that radiated control and purpose. He spoke plainly, his words measured yet powerful, reminding them that humanity sought neither conquest nor dominance. What Earth demanded was simple: respect and the freedom to determine their own destiny. He proposed a reimagined council, one founded on cooperation rather than intimidation, where each member race, young and old, would stand as equals. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, knowing that rejecting this proposition meant risking not only continued war but the possible dissolution of the Council itself. With humanity's resistance inspiring dissent across their territories, they could no longer afford to cling to their previous notions of superiority. Graves' proposal appealed to those factions that had grown tired of the Council's oppressive structure, igniting a spark of hope for a more balanced and inclusive future. As Graves outlined his vision, some of the Council's older members balked, clinging to the remnants of their authority, but the younger, progressive representatives saw the logic in his words. Humanity's unexpected strength had proven that the Council's rigid, hierarchical system was flawed. If the Council was to survive and evolve, it would need to abandon its practices of forced submission and adopt a stance of mutual respect. Slowly, one by one, factions began to show their support for Graves' vision, realizing that this new alliance would stabilize the galaxy far more effectively than brute force ever could. In an unprecedented show of unity, a vote was cast, and Graves' proposal for a reformed council passed by a narrow but decisive margin. The changes he proposed were sweeping, erasing the old structure of enforced compliance and replacing it with a framework of autonomy, equality, and shared responsibility. Humanity's place within this council was now one of equal standing, no longer subject to the whims of those who had once dismissed them as insignificant. Graves had succeeded not only in securing humanity's independence but in transforming the very core of the council's identity. But Graves' work wasn't finished. To solidify humanity's new position, he presented a plan for a cooperative security network, one that would protect all member planets without imposing on their sovereignty. This network, he explained, would serve as a safeguard against any external threats while respecting each civilization's autonomy. It was a profound shift from the Council's previous model of dominance, and though some members were hesitant, they couldn't deny the appeal of a united, decentralized defense system. As the Council officially ratified these changes, the atmosphere in the chambers shifted once more. Representatives who had once been hostile now extended their hands in respect, acknowledging that humanity had done the impossible, challenged the galaxy's oldest powers and reshaped them. Graves accepted their gestures with a calm dignity, knowing that this moment was a victory not just for Earth but for all who valued self-determination. Back on Earth, news of the Council's decision was met with celebration. Humanity had not only defended its home but had won a place of respect among the stars. Graves returned as a hero, his efforts marking a turning point in galactic history. He had proven that humanity was more than a curious anomaly. They were a force that valued both peace and resilience, willing to stand for their beliefs even in the face of overwhelming odds. As Earth and the Council's newly structured alliance moved forward, the galaxy began to see a change. Member planets once oppressed by the Council's iron grip found a newfound sense of autonomy. The oppressive policies that had once kept them subservient were replaced by fair agreements and mutual respect. And those who had fought alongside Earth in secret were given a voice within the new order, their contributions recognized and rewarded. In the end, the Council's attempts to subdue humanity had backfired spectacularly. What had begun as a demand for submission had become a catalyst for revolution, reshaping the Council into an entity that represented and protected its members rather than ruling over them. Humanity had shown that strength wasn't in power alone but in resilience, unity, and a fierce determination to defend their right to choose their path. As the Council adjourned, Graves stood once more in the chamber's center, surrounded by a circle of representatives who now regarded him as an equal. The once dismissive Council members now looked at him with respect, even admiration, for he had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, a species that could not only hold its ground but inspire change. As he left the chamber, Graves knew that the path ahead would not be without challenges. Maintaining peace and respect across such a vast array of species would take work, compromise, and vigilance. But for the first time, he felt confident that humanity could face these challenges not as an isolated world but as an integral part of a galaxy striving for a new era of unity and understanding.